Hey, hello there, friends. It's Jimmy Maverick. How you doing out there? We are going to talk about the Week 2 waiver wire for Week 2 coming up here. And obviously, Week 1 was very good in some respects and very bad in others. I got to say, man, just a terrible week for quarterbacks. Not a lot of passing touchdowns. That clearly got reflected on a lot of wide receivers busting this weekend. But I'm not ready to hit the panic button on any of these guys yet, just because there was very low pass volume. I mean, there were so many quarterbacks that passed for less than 200 yards. When that happens, you're just not going to have good quarterback. You're not going to have good wide receiver numbers because there's not that much to go around. So I'm not too worried about it. I think it's a lot of it is just week one. A lot of these guys didn't play during the preseason, and so they're shaking the rust off. So I'm willing to wait and see before I really make a determination on players. But we do have some injuries that happened this past week. You probably need to fill some holes in your roster. So let's just get right to it. Let's talk about who we're looking at. So let's start with the quarterback position. And there's really three names here that you should consider. Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, and Derek Carr. If I was to prioritize this, I'd say Baker Mayfield is the top pickup. He's definitely on the team with the best offense. Sam Darnold, I'm not sure if he's actually good or if it's just the Giants defense is just absolutely the worst. So we'll see what happens when Minnesota actually plays a real defense. But still, I think Sam Darnold, he did really good this week, very much outperformed what most people were expecting. Derek Carr as well. You know, Derek Carr, he had a good fantasy day because he got 3 touchdowns, but it wasn't really that great otherwise. He only had 200 passing yards. But again, I've got Derek Carr as a QB3 in a number of best ball leagues. I'm pretty happy I have him. Should be a solid contributor. The offense looks pretty good. But again, how much of that is just the fact that Carolina is really just that bad? But anyway, if I was to go for any of these, I'd go for Baker Mayfield. Now let's move on to running backs. And with the running back position, some interesting names emerged this past week. One very surprising one for me was Tank Bigsby, who ended up with 12 touches. He did not get any targets, but 12 touches is pretty good. Not enough for me to want to start him, but definitely worth a roster slot, especially if anything happens to Etienne. He looks to be in a really good position, has obviously done much better than he did last year. J.K. Dobbins, another one absolutely worth picking up. He had 10 touches and 3 targets yesterday. Was very good with them. It was very efficient with what he received. Had a couple of big plays. And as long as he's healthy, man, I think he's good. You know, he should be good to start on a weekly basis. So you've got that. Hopefully you just drafted J.K. Dobbins, but he should be available. I think he's only like 59% rostered, so there's a good chance he's sitting on your waiver wire right now. The other guy I want to mention is Jaleel McLaughlin, who appears to be kind of the lead back for Denver as far as his usage is concerned. He did get 10 touches and 5 receptions yesterday, so that was by far better than anyone else in the Denver backfield. So I think he's absolutely worth picking up. Not sure I would start him, but he definitely is worth a bench slot for sure. Some other names you might want to consider: Alexander Mattison. He had a big fantasy day because he got the touchdown, but really he didn't get a lot of usage. It was 5 touches and 4 receptions. So not really enough to want to start him, but he's worth holding on your bench. Bucky Irving got 9 touches and 3 targets. Justice Hill, he only got 1 touch, but he got 8 targets. Justice Hill is going to be one of those guys that's only good if Baltimore falls into a negative game script. I don't anticipate that happening too often this season, but it did happen week 1, so he got a lot of usage. I'm not really sure if I would want to take him. Finally, we've got Jamal Williams, who had 11 touches and a target. I think that just might have been because they were blowing out Carolina and he got some work there. Of all these names, I'm kind of the least interested in that one. And there's one more name I added here, Emmanuel Wilson. who definitely appears to be the backup to Josh Jacobs. He was very effective. He only got like 4 touches, but he turned it into like 48 yards. Very, very effective there. With the whole, with A.J. Dillon being on season-ending IR and Marshawn Lloyd still dealing with his injury, a hamstring, I do believe. He's not going to play till at least week 4. Emmanuel Wilson is the number 2 guy in that backfield. So he's definitely worth picking up. Anything happens to Josh Jacobs, he's going to be startable. All right, so let's move on to wide receivers. And again, a lot of bust wide receivers. I would not panic. Again, it was just a bad week for quarterbacks. Not a lot of passing touchdowns. In fact, there was 2 games where the winning team did not score an offensive touchdown. So, I think it's just week 1. I think this should improve week 2, week 3. Hold on to those starters, those guys you spend a lot of draft capital on. I think they're going to be fine. I'm not worried about CeeDee Lamb. I'm not worried about Jamar Chase. I'm not worried about Amon-Ra or Chris Olave or Drake London. I'm still giving it more time before I panic, although my panic level is a little higher with Drake London than anyone else. But again, it was a really tough defense and just a very poor offensive showing overall. I put it at the feet mostly of the quarterback. Hopefully Kirk Cousins can improve. But for wide receivers, the 2 I want to talk about that are the priority pickups this week, one would be Demarcus Robinson of the LA Rams. He received 7 targets last night, was clearly the number 2 receiver after Puka went out with his injury. We don't know how long Puka's going to be out. It seems like he's going to be out for a while. So Demarcus Robinson, absolutely my top pickup. And another one is a guy that nobody talked about. Nobody even knew who this guy was coming into the season. But Devon Vele of the Denver Broncos had 8 targets yesterday. That's unbelievable. That's a startable player. That's a flex startable player. So he would be my number 2 priority. Some other guys that did get a lot of volume. Wan'Dale Robinson got 12 targets. Again, it's a terrible offense with a terrible quarterback. There's not a whole lot of upside there, but you can't ignore that volume. Greg Dortch of Arizona, Ray McLeod of Atlanta, and Xavier Legette of Carolina. All those guys, let's hear, Dortch had 8 targets, Ray and Xavier had 7. So all that's good enough to be worth a roster slot. So those are guys you could also try for. But my priority would be Devon Vele and Demarcus Robinson. Now, there were also some really big wide receiver production off of players that did not get that much volume. These are not players that I'm interested in. I mean, I'll keep them on my bench if I have them, but I'm not going to go out and try to acquire them or trade for them because the volume is so low that their ability to repeat that production is very, very limited at best. And so guys like Rashid Shaheed or Alec Pierce, these guys had huge fantasy days, great fantasy days. Their fantasy numbers look fantastic, but you look behind the numbers, each of these guys only got 3 targets. Xavier Worthy is another example. Xavier Worthy also had a fantastic fantasy day. He had 1 touch and 3 targets, and he turned it into, over 100 yards of offense, which is outstanding. But these are not guys that I want to start on a week-to-week basis because these guys are more likely than not just going to bust out and get you nothing. So if you have them on your bench, I'd keep them there. I would not start them for week 2. Until we see some more volume out of them. We got to see some more volume. And that could happen with if the quarterbacks improve, there could be more volume. More volume would mean more targets, and that would put them into the range where you would want to start them. But for right now, those guys would all be on my bench, and I would not try to acquire them if they are on the waiver wire. Let someone else go after those guys. Instead, go after Demarcus Robinson. Go after Devon Vele. Those guys are better options than Shaheed or Pierce or Worthy. Worthy's not going to be on the waiver wire, but you know what I mean. All right, so the next category is the tight end. And tight end, again, was absolutely terrible in week 1. Terrible. I mean, across the board. So there was only 3 tight ends that got more than 5 targets in week 1. That is ridiculous. That is absurdly low. Most of them got 4 or 5 targets. And so if you have one of those tight ends, like Kelsey, right, who only got like 3 targets or 4 targets on the Thursday night game, don't panic. I would still put them in for week 2. I'm not going to give up on those players, but we did have a couple of injuries. We had Ferguson and we had Njoku. So if you have one of those two guys, well, you need to start finding alternatives. So obviously the top priority pickup would be Isaiah Likely, the tight end for Baltimore, who had an amazing 12 targets in week 1, by far and away the highest volume tight end of anybody out there. He should be easy to get off the waiver wire, and he is worth a priority roster spot. Okay, so especially if you had an injured tight end, this is the guy you should go after. The other one I'm interested in is Colby Parkinson of the LA Rams. Again, because of Higbee, right? Higbee's injured. Higbee, we're not going to see Higbee till at least the middle of the season. And then also the Puka injury. Well, Colby Parkinson ended up with 5 targets. Again, it's not great, but it is something. And so again, if you lost a tight end, Colby Parkinson, I think, is also a great add for this week. 2 other guys I want to mention. Again, these are not guys that I would consider normally, but the volume was just so bad. We have Foster Moreau of New Orleans, and we have Jordan Akins of Cleveland. You know, obviously with Njoku missing time, that means Akins is going to become the tight end 1. So each of these guys only got 4 targets. It's really not even worth starting them, but there could be some more volume for Akins there. I don't know about Moreau. It is a very tough situation, but don't freak out about your tight end because everybody had a crappy tight end in week 1. There was only 3 decent tight ends in week 1. So don't sweat it. Should get better for the guys you pick. Just start them again for week 2. Hopefully it'll be better with the volume. Finally, let's talk about defenses. And there are some key matchups that I'm really interested in. So the first one would be the LA Chargers. That would be my priority pickup for this week. They are at Carolina. So this should be a really good game for the defense. There should be a lot of opportunities for turnovers and points scored off of turnovers. The Chargers are in a great situation. So, hopefully you had them in week 1 and you just played them against Vegas. But if you didn't, that would be my number 1 priority add. Denver's defense also looked really good, and they actually have a pretty good matchup against Pittsburgh, whose offense is very poor. It's just not good, especially with Fields being the quarterback. So I think the Denver defense is one that you can add this week. I also like taking a chance on Washington. Now, Washington's defense didn't look good against Baker Mayfield, but who do they get to play? They get to play the Giants at home. So I'm thinking that's also a good matchup play. I would like any opportunity to play Daniel Jones because there's going to be lots of turnovers, so just go for that. There were some other good matchups. Kansas City plays Cincinnati. Philadelphia plays Atlanta, so those guys are good. And there were some defenses that did really good in week 1. Not real thrilled about their matchup for week 2. The Vikings are one example. I believe they play San Francisco in week 2. And then New Orleans, they play Dallas. So I would not expect them to repeat. Chicago is also on this list. Hold on one second. All right. And Houston is playing, Houston is playing Chicago this week. So I would not, and the Bears are at Houston. I would not start that defense, even though they had a good weekend. But anyway, so those are my waiver wires for this week. So go through. I'm sure you're going to find a lot of these guys are available on your waiver wire. So if they are, make a bid for them, pick them up, and get them on your team. You know, you never want to stop improving your team. You always have to look for opportunities, who's getting the opportunities. You want to add those players to your team and dump off the guys that aren't getting any usage. So, again, good luck in week 2, everyone. And if there's any other names that I didn't mention here you think I should have mentioned, put them down below, all right? But don't forget to like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. I do appreciate it. Have yourself a great day, everybody. I'll talk to you soon.